Hey everybody, hope you're doing great. We are reading more about Thomas Jefferson. It's been an excellent book so far. Highly informative, lots of dates, lots of interesting fact nuggets that we overlook, and it helps to expand our minds. So let's continue. We're on page 135. The culture of Virginia was not conducive to rapid military deployment in the best of times. Now, in wartime, militias were even more difficult to muster. Mild laws, a people not used to war and prompt obedience, a want of the provisions of war and means of procuring them render our orders often ineffectual. Now, notice this, render our orders often ineffectual. So, provisions of war, and then the means of getting those provisions will make you not really good at war. So, again, sourcing your resources, right? Oblige us to temporize, and when we cannot accomplish an object in one way, to attempt it in another. Jefferson told a French newcomer in March 1781, the Marquis de Lafayette, who had reached Virginia, to take command of continental troops. Okay, continental troops. It may not have been fear of the British that kept Jefferson in check for those 2 days. It is possible that he feared mobilizing a public when he could not be sure the threat was real, thus risking the wrath of the people. Okay, so notice this. He feared getting everyone riled up and then finding out there was not a legitimate threat. Today, though, people weaponize people like missiles. Seriously. You have a certain criminal case, people don't wait for the evidence, they impulsively act on it, therefore letting their energy be weaponized by Machiavellian political movers, and then it causes more problem and it just creates more discord. So, Jefferson, waiting for a legitimate reason to rally people to outcry, was commendable. By hesitating, he failed to bring his constituents along to the place they needed to be. See, he did the right thing, but he failed because, he hesitated, they say. Now, that's the difficulty of it, though. Do you hesitate or do you act? When do you act? When do you call in the roosters, as they say? The lessons Jefferson was learning painfully in Virginia would help him immensely in later years, when his responsibilities were even larger. Boldness and decisiveness were sometimes virtues in a leader. I mean, decisiveness, yes. You need to be decisive if you want to be a leader. Boldness? Yeah. It's really gross to see a cowering, sniveling leader. Boldness, now, that's in order to be bold, your leader needs to have a good sense of mind. They can't have dementia, and they can't be overly old. I really wish we had term limits for every department in politics. No more than 8 years. Cut off at the age of 60. We have people who are far too old, and then we have younger minds in their 30s and 40s not getting much opportunity because there's career politicians. The older they get, the less bold they get. The boldness is found more in the young than necessarily in the old, although I'm sure you could find examples in both. Having failed to be either bold or decisive during the invasions of Virginia. See, people have been talking about this recently. So he's saying invasion. Today we have a rising communist anarchist insurrection. And people are waiting to see who's going to take the action. Who's going to allow the chaos to reign, which will then lead to the opposite of that, right? Something can't just keep flowing until it meets a brick wall, till it meets resistance, and then when it meets that resistance, the equal almost amount of force will be pushed the other way, right? So we have people who are being bold violently and who are being decisive and raining terror on us, And people are looking to our current leader and wondering, when are you going to send in the military? Be decisive, take them out, but it's hard because you don't want your leader to come off as a dictator or a tyrant. And not every response needs the same degree, but you do need to be decisive. But mayors and governors have become bold in a way that puts the economy and job market in a really puzzling place. If truck drivers are fearing of getting robbed and rioters pulling them from their truck and bashing their brains in, I saw some videos of older riots and new ones where people swarm cars. It's quite crazy. See, we're not being decisive if police and rioters just keep wrestling and playing with each other in the streets. They throw something, they throw back. Either the people, one side's decided we're doing our revolution whether you like it or not. The other side of law and order has not decided to be bold and say, no more, it's time to get back inside. No more super spreader rioting of the virus. Go home. Stop it. People won't do that. And then you have our other politicians on the Dem side not being decisive and telling the groups by their names to stop doing this. They simply say peaceful protest. I support peaceful protest. Instead, they're not being decisive in saying stop doing X, Y, and Z, and I support penalties for those who do X, Y, and Z. They're not being decisive and bold against their fringe. And then who's in power is not being decisive and bold to stop the fringe. I mean, what do you do, you know? What do you do? This book has really got me thinking, man. What do you think? I'm sure you can look to a local example where you are, where you want your leader to be bold and decisive. Is it better to be bold and decisive and make a mistake? Or is it worse to not be bold and decisive, be hesitant, and then wish you would have been bold, right? Now, you don't want to be impulsive. One curious thing that I think Game of Thrones did very well, yet very badly at the same time, because they didn't set up the plot for it. When Daenerys was impulsive and just decided to burn King's Landing, she made a decision. What she did was bold, but then it became crazy, right? And then you're like, okay, that's too much, right? But being bold can also be diplomacy as well. You can make good deals. You can propose bold legislation. You can do a lot. You don't have to just have bodies on the ground to be bold, right? As in troops in their boots. He gained valuable experience about the price of waiting. At the time, however, he could not have known that one day he would owe something of his presidential success to his failures of 1781. Well, there you go. Okay, this is chapter 13, titled Redcoats at Monticello. Quote, such terror and confusion you have no idea of, Governor Council. Everybody scampering. Betsy Ambler, daughter of Rebecca Burwell. So such terror and confusion. Wow, okay, Redcoats at Monticello, meaning the British are there. Jefferson's Virginia was teetering in the face of British force. Lord Cornwallis, I haven't heard that name in a while, and Lieutenant Colonel Banstray Tarleton, who was noted for his ferocious tactics, turned their attention toward the state in the late spring of 1781. Fearing the conquering Redcoats, Governor Jefferson and the Virginia General Assembly retreated from Richmond to Charlottesville, but even there the legislature could barely muster a quorum. Oh, geez. If they can barely muster a quorum, do you remember in the previous chapter when they were saying it was hard to muster a militia to, fight the British troops? And now they're continuing that same narrative, really emphasizing for us the difficulty of getting people together. In this difficult period, the Jeffersons endured a by now all familiar tragedy, the death of yet another child. 3 of their children had now died. So let's look at that. I know today we celebrate abortion. I've seen girls have t-shirts, earrings, necklaces of hangers. Very strange ways to celebrate the tearing apart of babies and minimizing irresponsibility and personal accountability. But still, it is quite sad that Jefferson loses these children. And I know some feminists will say a miscarriage is sad, an abortion is not. And then I'm like, both are sad. But poor Jefferson, man. That's just terrible. I couldn't imagine going through that loss 3 times. And he didn't break down. He didn't quit. He didn't give up. That's another reason why Jefferson is remarkable. Because some people take time after their manager's been rude to them to cool off all day for maybe a 5-minute exchange. Yet Jefferson is carrying the weight of fighting a imperial power while also having skirmishes with Native Americans and slave rebellions and all other uh, profound actions of both parties. It's just crazy that he dealt with all this while also having children die, and he didn't go insane. Another thing you can admire him for.